We meet a guy so committed to drinking that it basically becomes his full-time job. Forget 9 to 5, this is dawn to dusk, keg after keg, like an Olympic sport of bottomless gulps. Now one day, his bartender dies, the only guy who can keep him in steady supply. What does he do? Cry? Quit? Switch to water? Not this guy. Our hero does what any responsible palm wine addict would do. He embarks on a wild supernatural journey to bring his dead palm wine tapster back from the land of the dead. And that, my friends, is how our story begins. A book as fantastical, strange, and wildly entertaining as it sounds. The narrator opens the tale by proudly introducing himself, and he doesn't waste time giving us his resume. He says,
I was a palm wine drinkard since I was a boy of 10 years of age. I had no other work more than to drink palm wine in my life. In those days, we did not know other money, except cowries, so that everything was cheap, and my father was the richest man in our town.
And just like that, you know what you're dealing with. This is no ordinary man. He is, as he calls himself, Father of Gods who could do anything in this world. But his life takes a tragic turn when his beloved palm wine tapster, the guy responsible for supplying him endless kegs of wine, dies. For most of us, that might be the end of the story. But not for this drinkard. He sets off to the mysterious Dead's Town to fetch his tapster back. And what a journey it is. Along the way, he encounters everything your wildest folktale could imagine. Spirits, demons, giants, red people, dwarves, you name it. Each episode feels like its own colorful folktale stitched into the fabric of the larger quest. One of the early adventures brings him into the infamous Forest of Evil. Here he comes across a young woman who had foolishly followed a so-called complete gentleman. Now, when you hear complete gentleman, you might think of a man in a nice suit with polished shoes. Nope. This gentleman is complete only because he literally borrows body parts from different people, piece by piece, until he looks whole. Creepy doesn't even begin to describe it. The poor woman follows him into the evil forest and never comes back, until the Palm-Wine Drinkard shows up. Of course he rescues her because he can do anything in this world. And then, as these things usually go in folktales, he marries her on the spot. From that point on, they become traveling companions, continuing together into the unknown, deeper and deeper toward the land of the dead. Their adventures only get stranger. At one point, he encounters a man who promises to show him where his dead palm wine tapster is, but on one bizarre condition: he must first capture Death. Simple, right? Just a casual errand. Somehow, with his juju, his trickery, and a dash of what can only be called divine providence, the Drinkard actually manages to trap Death inside a net.
Shazam!
Just picture it. Death squirming like a fish, caught by a drunkard on a rescue mission. But of course, things don't end smoothly. When he throws Death down, the net breaks and Death escapes, roaming the world, homeless, forever. And that, the tale explains, is why Death wanders everywhere.
I've never been more shocked.
That's the beauty of African folklore. You don't just get a story, you get explanations for the mysteries of the world. Why is Death always present? Well, because once upon a time, a palm wine drinkard accidentally set him loose.
How could you?
Toward the end of his journey, the drinkard comes into possession of a magical egg. This egg can provide everything one could possibly need. After his long travels, he finally returns home with it. But of course, the moment people hear of it, his so-called friends who abandoned him when the wine ran dry suddenly reappear, eager to share in the bounty. By this point, however, the drinkard has grown wiser. He knows better than to be fooled again by greedy, opportunistic friends. So what's this wild, booze-fueled, demon-haunted, death-chasing adventure called? Well, it's none other than Amos Tutuola's 1952 novel, The Palm-Wine Drinkard, and his dead palm wine tapster in the Dead's Town, published by Faber and Faber. Through his adventures, we see truths about human nature. The narrator had countless friends when his tapster was alive, because he provided them with endless kegs of palm wine. But when the tapster died and the drink stopped flowing, every last friend deserted him. Sound familiar? That's folklore doing what folklore does best, teaching lessons about loyalty, greed, and selfishness. Later, when he returns with an egg that can provide anything one needs, those same so-called friends come flocking back, ready to benefit again. But by then, the Palm-Wine Drinkard has learned better.
#disloyal.
What's fascinating is that throughout his journey, he is helped not just by his own juju and cleverness, but also by a mysterious providence. For instance, when he has to rescue the young woman who later becomes his wife, he is magically able to see into the lives of the skulls who had captured her, even glimpsing the past events that led up to it. With this foreknowledge, he rescues her successfully. In African folklore, such feats are normal. Characters are not bound by the limits of logic or physics. Everything is possible and nothing is beyond imagination. And the stories overlap with folklore traditions from across Africa. For example, tales about battles between heaven and earth, or magic canes that beat ungrateful people, are also found in Ghanaian stories. Spirits, demons, dangerous creatures, all of them are personified, given character, agency, and voice. But let's not forget what really makes the Palm-Wine Drinkard unforgettable: the language. Amos Tutuola didn't write in polished English. Instead, he used a raw, informal, almost pigeon-like English that captured the rhythm of oral storytelling. Take this line, for instance.
Then I changed the lady to a kitten and put her inside my pocket and changed myself to a very small bird which I could describe as a sparrow in English language.
It's direct. It's unusual. It's almost childlike in its simplicity. And yet, it's powerful. You feel the oral roots of the tale, the sense that you're sitting around a fire listening to someone spin a story straight from memory, unfiltered by grammar or rules. This is part of why the book is so important. It shows that storytelling is not only about polished sentences and proper grammar. As Tutuola demonstrates, it's about imagination, creativity, and voice. This book is one of those rare works where the form is just as fascinating as the content. On one hand, it's a wild series of linked folk tales, full of colorful spirits, magical transformations, and moral lessons. On the other hand, it's a radical experiment in language. Critics in the 1950s were divided. Some mocked Tutuola's broken English, but others recognized its brilliance. Instead of dressing his stories up in polished colonial grammar, Tutuola used English on his own terms, translating Yoruba storytelling directly into written form. That authenticity is what makes the book so groundbreaking. Themes leap out everywhere: greed and selfishness, the fickle nature of friendships based on what you can provide, the mysteries of life and death. Why do certain things happen? Folk tales provide answers, the power of imagination. Everything is possible. Nothing is beyond the story. The value of storytelling itself. Stories preserve culture, teach lessons, and explain the inexplicable. And above all, it's fun. These are not dry moral lessons tucked into stiff narratives. These are bizarre, entertaining, and humorous episodes that keep you hooked. No wonder the Palm-Wine Drinkard was named one of Africa's 100 best books of the 20th century. So who was Amos Tutuola, the man behind this unforgettable tale? Amos Tutuola, born in 1920 in Abeokuta, Nigeria, was the son of Yoruba cocoa farmers. His education was brief, only 6 years in total. When his father died, Tutuola trained as a blacksmith and even worked for the Royal Air Force in Nigeria during World War II. He also tried his hand at selling bread and working as a messenger. In 1946, with only a few days of writing, he completed the Palm-Wine Drinkard. The manuscript found its way to Faber and Faber, who published it in 1952. And just like that, Tutuola became an international sensation. He married Victoria Alake in 1947, and together they had 8 children, 4 sons and 4 daughters. Despite his lack of formal education, he carved his name into literary history, proving that great storytelling doesn't depend on perfect grammar, but on imagination and voice. So, to wrap it all up, the Palm-Wine Drinkard is not just a book, it's an experience. It's chaotic, it's magical, it's deeply African, and it's unlike anything else you've ever read. And next time you're pouring yourself a drink, maybe raise a glass to the Father of Gods who could do anything in this world, the Palm-Wine Drinkard who went to Deadstown for a refill. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you're interested in diving deeper into this book, I've left some links down in the description. You can use it to grab yourself a copy and keep the adventure going. And if you're in the mood for more great reads, don't go just yet. click on one of the videos popping up right now that I think you'll love. And don't forget to give this review a like, leave a comment, or even subscribe if you'd like to see more. Every bit of support helps us grow this little community of book lovers. See you in the next one.